Welcome to Law and Life, the Leverett's Approach.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Law and Life, the Leverett's Approach with attorney Yoni Leveretts. Yoni is the founder of Leverett's Law Firm and is recognized for his exceptional skill in family law, his compassionate manner, and his commitment to achieving favorable outcomes for his clients. I'm Sean O'Connor, and in today's episode, we're talking about modern prenuptial and postnuptial agreements in New York, including how couples handle issues involving pets, cohabitation, and non-traditional family structures. It's going to be good stuff. Yoni, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So when couples explore modern prenup or postnup, what topics tend to come up, beyond the traditional questions about assets and support?
Beyond the traditional questions, disability insurance, life insurance, savings accounts, that will be created for the purpose of having joint marital savings. So that way neither party walks away from the marriage without having sufficient income or assets. I would say those are the big three, especially for people who don't own houses yet. And a lot of people entering into prenuptial agreements are young. Therefore, they want to make sure that there's going to be a marital residence at some point in time. So a savings account, which they're both going to use and both going to deposit money into, is a very useful tool.
I feel like I've seen prenups in the news more lately. Are they getting more popular?
I would say so, yes. People do not want the state governing their divorces. People want to govern their divorces on their own. I mean, while people talk about the rise of socialism and people wanting socialism, people do not want socialism when it comes to their marriages or their divorces.
Speaking about, courts deciding, how do courts in New York view agreements that address, say, pet ownership, daily care responsibilities, or long-term arrangements involving animals, right? Seems like everybody these days has a dog or a cat or something more exotic even.
Those things are governed by the best interest of the animal. Okay, Therefore, what happens is many times they're split 50-50, week on, week off schedules. But the courts do look at who took care of the animal, who took care of the veterinarian, who feeds the dog, who feeds the cat, who takes care of it. It used to be viewed as an item of property. Okay, but now it's actually viewed more as an extension of the family. For example, if the children are going to be at home with mom, chances are mom is ending up with the dog.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think about people these days often refer to themselves as a dog mom or a cat dad, and it sounds like in the view of the court that's more true now than it used to be.
Yes, that is definitely true.
So couples who have been, cohabitating, living together for years before marriage, what makes it important to clarify financial expectations in a written agreement? Why should they do this?
Because the exposure of dealing with the court is obscene. I mean, courts award so much money that people cannot afford to pay the bills. Therefore, men of means or women of means, they want those agreements because they want to be able to be in a position where they can support themselves, support their lifestyle, and still provide support for their family. They just don't want it to be something like a 70-30 split where the 70% goes to the other side. Between legal fees and spousal support and child support. I mean, just taking a child support basic calculation at 25% for two children, and that is pre-tax basically. I mean, the only thing coming off is basically Medicaid and Medicare, okay, and your New York City taxes if you live in New York City or Yonkers. Okay, so your federal and your state taxes are still there. So if your federal and state taxes were going to eat up 50% of your paycheck, now take off another 25% just for your two kids. What do you have left? Nothing.
Wow. Ouch. Yeah. Now, I think, some relationships certainly involve non-traditional structures or shared households even, with extended family. How can a prenup or a postnup help define responsibilities and expectation in those situations?
Financially, they can help deal with the situation in terms of rent being collected or contributions or things of that sort. However, further than that, they're really not an important document. But if your mom is living with you and she's occupying space, she should pay for the space.
Got it. What about, let's say, business interests or intellectual property or future income streams are part of someone's life? What considerations tend to matter most in drafting an agreement, that will hold up later?
You want to have it be the separate property of the person who's holding on to it.
Hmm.
Okay, you want to be able to make sure that it's clear that that business is the property of the person who started the business, or who may start the business, or who may have future businesses.
Got it. Yeah. So in the case, I'm interested in the intellectual property thing catches my eye. Let's say my live-in girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, is a novelist or an aspiring novelist. Then you might account for the fact that she's going to increase her. She's going to publish a book, and it's hers, not mine, and that kind of a thing has to be taken into account.
Absolutely, yes. She is putting in the sweat effort to it. She's the one who's sitting there drafting it. It's her mind that's putting pen to paper to make this thing happen. And yes, to a large extent, it would be equitable, okay, in an agreement for her to walk away with the book, with the royalties, and with everything else attached to it. Now, that doesn't mean she's not going to end up paying in other forms, okay, such as spousal support or paying in some other form, depending upon the agreement and the circumstances. But she's putting in the time and effort. She should be rewarded for it.
Yeah, of course. So what factors do New York courts evaluate when determining whether a prenup or postnup is enforceable, especially when it includes terms that aren't typical?
In general, to set aside a prenuptial agreement, you have to prove fraud, coercion, duress, or overreaching. Okay, that's why you should always have your prenup done 30 days before marriage. If you're doing a postnup, you should have separate consideration for it. Okay, separate amounts of money paid for it, separate things given to the other side for inducing them to sign it, some sort of benefit, some sort of gratuity. Okay, it has to be fair when it's signed. It has to be fair when you're getting divorced. Okay, the fairness standard is a little bit broad, but courts do have to look at it. And they should not be letting people out of agreements that they made fairly and equitably unless there is some sort of major change, such as a disability, which is why I build disability insurance into my agreements for both husbands and wives. If someone has a stroke, you want to make sure you're not paying spousal support. Well, you better be paying disability insurance.
What sorts of things would fall into the category of atypical? Like what are some unusual factors do you have any examples of that?
Everybody's life is different. I'm not going to say anything is unusual because what people consider their lives is what they love and what they care about. Therefore, it's not unusual. It's just what someone cares about.
Right. Good point. So if the agreement addresses issues like lifestyle expectations or privacy boundaries or even public image, how does that fit within what courts generally allow?
Courts are going to allow anything with regarding confidentiality. They're not going to look at that in terms of fairness. They're going to look at that in terms of a bargain for exchange. Courts are not going to look at the fact that, she can't go onto YouTube and say bad things about her husband or her wife or his wife or whatever it may be. Okay, they're going to look at the fact that this is what the parties agreed upon. The main focus in terms of fairness is going to be on spousal support / alimony. Mm-hmm. Child support can't be included in an agreement. It has to be dealt with separately. Okay, they're going to look at division of assets and whether there's sufficient assets to support the other party and what the deal was when it was made. Do they have comparable incomes? Do they have incomes that justify this? Is one person going to be left a pauper as a result of this particular agreement, making it unconscionable? An agreement that a normal person or a regular person would not sign. They're going to investigate it and, look at things. But things like confidentiality, they're not going to really investigate. No one wants anyone blasting someone on the first page of the Wall Street Journal.
What about, I know you've handled, many many cases over the years. Is there a matter you've handled where, a modern or say non-traditional provision in a prenup or postnup became a significant point of discussion or contention? Any stories around that?
Any stories?
Well,
Not really stories. They're all negotiations.
yeah.
I don't want to pay that much in maintenance. I'm willing to compromise on this number. They're negotiations, like anything else. You're buying a car.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
negotiate over it.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
Who wants to pay list price?
Right. Right. Yeah, I want to give me a deal here. This is maybe, plainly obvious. And obviously prenup, postnup, pre, post, before and after. In a very simple way, like, what's the difference between a prenup and a postnup? Like, I think people's like, oh, I'm prenup, but postnup isn't as part of the common vernacular, I feel. How do you differentiate those for people?
Well, one is before marriage, one is after marriage. One, the consideration, the bargain for exchange is the marriage. One, you need a separate bargain for exchange. Therefore, we typically offer the other spouse an inducement to sign it.
Right. Good stuff. Well, Yanni, we're coming up on time, which happens. And thanks for being here. It's good to see you. Good to talk to you. Thanks for sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Law and Life, the Leverett's Approach. To contact Yoni or learn more about navigating divorce and family law in New York, visit his website at leverettslaw.com. And if you found this episode helpful, be sure to give it a like, maybe leave a review or share it with someone you know that could benefit from this kind of information. And you can always subscribe. I'm Sean O'Connor. Thanks for being here. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.